today's video, I thought I would talk about a brand that I do talk about in my new makeup releases, and that is Chanel. Chanel is a luxury fashion brand. Chanel is a French luxury fashion brand. Chanel was founded in 1910 by Coco Chanel in Paris. These are some of I found. These are top 10 Coco Chanel quotes. You were born an original, don't become a copy. A woman who doesn't wear perfume has no future. Fashion changes, style remains. In order to be irreplaceable, one must always be different. A girl should be two things, classy and fabulous. Some people think luxury is the opposite of poverty. It is not. It's the opposite of rarity. If I've said that right, I do apologise. Simplistically is the keynote of true elegance. The best colour in the world is the one that looks good on you. Luxury must be comfortable, otherwise it is not luxury. I wanted to give women comfortable clothes that would flow with her body. A woman is closest to being naked when she's well dressed. Coco Chanel's actual name is Gabriella Bon Chanel, do excuse my pronunciation. Coco Chanel was born on the 19th of August 1883 and died January 1971. She was credited in the post-World War I era with popularizing a sporty casual chic as their feminine standard style. This replaced the corset silhouette that had been earlier dominated with a style that was simpler, far less time-consuming to put on and remove, more comfortable and less expensive, all without sacrificing elegance. This replaces the corset silhouette. She was the only fashion designer listed on Times Magazine's list of 100 most influential people of the 20th century. A profitable fashion creator, Chanel extended her influence beyond cultural clothing, realizing her aesthetic design in jewelry, handbags, fragrance. Chanel's signature scent is Chanel No. 5, that has become an iconic product. Chanel herself designed her famed internal locked CC monogram, which has been in use since the 1920s. Chanel began designing hats while living with Burleson Eternity as a division that evolved into a commercial enterprise. She became a licensed millionaire in 1910 and opened a boutique at 21 Rue Cambon, Paris, named Chanel. At the age of 20, Coco Chanel had her first store, opened her own hat shop, thanks to the financial support she received from a rich man. Later, she opened 2 more stores in which she began to sell clothes. In 1920, Chanel took her already thriving business to new heights with the iconic Chanel No. 5. So, the First World War affected 1914 to 1918 affected European fashion through scarcity of materials and mobilization of women. If I have said that wrong, I do apologise. By the time Chanel opened a large dress shop at 31 Rue Cambon near the Hotel Ritz in Paris, among the clothes for sale were flannel blazers, straight-line skirts of linen, sailor blouse, long sweaters made of jersey fabric, and skirt and jacket suit. Coco Chanel used jersey cloth because of its physical properties as a garment, such as its drape, how it falls upon and falls from the body of the woman, and how well it adapted to a simple garment design. Certainly some of Chanel's designs. Some of Chanel's designs divide from the military uniform made prevalent by the war, and by 1915 the designs and the clothes produced by the House of Chanel were known throughout France. In 1915, Chanel opened her very first culture house in Biarritz, France. She had 300 employers and even designed her first line of horticulture. In 1915 and 1917, Harper's Bazaar magazine reported that the garment of the Le Maison Chanel were on the list of every buyer for the clothing factories of Europe. The Chanel dress shop presented daywear dress and coat assembled of simple design and black evening dress trimmed with lace and tulle fabric dressed, decorated with jet amira gemstone material. Chanel's day outfits consisting of belted tunic jacket and full jersey skirt. Moving into after the First World War, La Maison Chanel followed the fashion trends of the 1920s, produced beaded dresses made popular by flapper women. The simple line flat chest fashion Chanel culture made popular were opposed of the hourglass figure. Fashion of the late 19th century, the Belle Époque of France, in the British Edwardian era. Chanel used colours traditionally associated with masculinity in Europe, such as grey, navy blue, to denote feminine boldness. Chanel's clothing often featured quilted fabric and leather trimmings. The quilted construction refines the fabric design and finish, allowing the garment to maintain its form and function while worn. Example is the woolen Chanel suit, a knee-length skirt, and a cardigan-style jacket trimmed and decorated with black embroidery and gold-coloured buttons, often associated with two-tone pump shoes and a necklace of pearls and a leather handbag. Moving into the 1920s, 1921, to complement the clothing line, Chanel commissioned a perfume, Orange Sprux, to create a perfume for Le Maison Chanel. The perfume included the perfume number 5, named after the number of the sample Chanel liked best. Originally given as a gift to clients, number 5's popularity promoted Le Maison Chanel to offer it for sale in 1922. 1923, to explain the success of her clothing, Coco Chanel told Harper's Bazaar magazine that design simplicity is the keynote of true elegance. Chanel was one of the first designer brands to get into the perfume market. Very common these days for luxury brands to have a perfume line, but it wasn't so common of that time. Chanel created a parfum with a mix of scents, something that wasn't common. Coco Chanel got men to invest in a company. The success of number 5 encouraged Coco Chanel to expand perfume sales beyond France and Europe to develop other perfumes, for which she required investment, capital, business acumen, and access to the North American market. To that end, the businessman, if I do butcher any names, I do apologise, Thorpolon Borda, founder of Gary's Lafayette, introduced the venture capitalist Pierre Weatherman to Coco Chanel. Their business deal established the Perfumes Chanel Company, a perfume of which Weatherman owned 70%, Balder owned 20%, and Chanel owned 10% commercial success of the joint enterprise and was assured by the Chanel name and by the Collage La Maison Chanel, which remained the solo business province of Coco Chanel. Nevertheless, despite the success of Chanel culture and perfume, the personal relationship between Coco Chanel and her capitalist partner deteriorated because Coco said that Pearl Westminster was exploiting her talents as a fashion designer and as a businesswoman. Weatherman reminded Chanel that he made her a very rich woman and that his venture capital had funded Chanel's product expansion of the perfume, which created the wealth they enjoyed success of number 5. Nevertheless, unsatisfied with businesswoman Gabrielle Chanel hired the Tommy Runda Cameron to reunite the 10% partnership she entered in 1924 with the Parfum Chanel company. The lawyer-to-lawyer negotiations failed, and partnership percentages remained as established in the original business deal among Wetherham, Brodel, and Chanel. Chanel was only able to get 10% of sales from the perfume. After the success of number 5, they put out more perfumes. Coco Chanel progressed to women's fashion in the 1930s. Evening dress designs were characterized by the elongated feminine style, and summer dresses featuring such contrasts as silver eyelet and shoulder straps, decorated with rhinestones drawing from the Renaissance time fashioning style. In 1932, Chanel presented an exhibition of jewelry dedicated to diamond as a fashion accessory. It featured cornet and fountain necklaces of diamonds, which were of such original design that Chanel, represented them in 1993. Moreover, by 1937, the House of Chanel expanded its range of clothing to more women and presents pret-a-porter clothing designed and cut for pretty women. Among fashion designers, only clothes created by Elisa Scopardia could compete with the clothes of Chanel. They created their jewelry line, also their classic handbags. At the end of the 1930s, the brand was shut down due to World War II. Coco Chanel closed a shop at Munson Chanel, leaving only jewelry and perfumes for sale. There's some stuff that to do with Coco Chanel and her involvement in the Second World War, which I'm not really going to go into that much. Moving on to the war's end. It's one where Chanel had lots of different relationships. Some gave her access to a lot of influential people, but very bad people, like she was friends with Pablo Picasso, Winston Churchill. It's one where Coco Chanel definitely went with the success, cared about the success and went with the success. In the post-war period, during Coco Chanel's Swiss exile from France, returning to Paris and regained formal administrative control of her family's business holdings, including control of Parfum Chanel, the perfume established with his tail capital and success because of the Chanel name. Resurgence in the 1950s and the 1970s. Chanel had the 1965 The Chanel suit. In 1953, upon returning to France and Switzerland, Coco Chanel found the fashion business in order of a new look by Christian Dior. The signature shape featured a below mid calf net full skirt, a narrow waist, and a large bust. Stylistical upsert since 1912. A post-war fashion that used some of 20 yards of fabric. The House of Dior costume culture renounced wartime rationing of fabric for clothes. The new look was welcomed by the fashion business of Western Europe because sales of the pretty clothes would revive business and the economy. To regain the business primacy of the House of Chanel in fashion fields of haute culture, costume, jewelry, and perfume would be expensive. Chanel approached Perel for business advice and capital. Having decided to do business with Coco Chanel, Stimnovon to fund the reshoots of the House of Chanel granted him commercial rights to Chanel's. In 1953, Chanel collaborated with jeweler Robert Gulson. He was to design jewelry to complement the fashion house of Chanel, notably long strand necklaces of black pearls and white pearls, which highly contrasted soft and served designs of knit wool Chanel suits, skirt and cardigan jacket. The House of Chanel presented leather handbags with either gold-coloured chains or metal and leather chains, which allowed carrying the handbag from the shoulder or in hand. The quilted leather handbag was presented to the public in February of 1955. In the House of Manon's version of the launching date for that line of handbags became international appellation for internal appellation for the mode that Chanel and her spring collection received the Fashion Oscar at the 1957 Fashion Awards in Dallas. Perel then bought Bander's 20% share of the perfume Chanel, which increased the percentage to 90%. 1954, Coco Chanel reopened her brand. Coco Chanel came back with a lot of success. She focused on pencil skirt stuff that was innovative for the 50s, basic, stylish classics and comfort. The 1950s, she made more handbags like the classic flap. Chanel used new textiles and fabric, but still pulled from what they known for. The 1950s was when Chanel started to boom in America. Coco Chanel died on the 10th of January 1971 at the age of 87. She was still designing at the time of her death. For example, in the 1966 to 1969 period, she designed the air hostess uniform for the Olympic Airways. The designer who followed was Pierre Cardin. In that time, Olympic Airways was a luxury airline owned by the transport major air hostess Honors. After her death, the leadership of the company was handed down to Yvonne Jean Cassons and Philippe Gondrin. So far, the bags designed by Chanel are still very popular in the vintage market. In 1974, the House of Chanel launched Croix de Toilette, which was designed when Coco Chanel was alive. In 1978, saw the launch of the first non-culture Pret a Porter line and worldwide distribution of accessories. Moving into the post-Coco era. In 1981, Chanel launched Altes de Toilette for men. In 1983, Karl Lagerfeld took over as chief designer for Chanel. Like Chanel, he looked into the past as inspiration for his designs. He incorporated the Chanel fabrics and detailing such as tweed, gold accessories and chains. Lagerfeld retained what was signature for Chanel, but also helped to bring the brand more into the present times. In later connections, Lagerfeld chose to break away from the ladylike look of Chanel and began experimenting with fabrics and styles. During the 1980s, more than 50% of Chanel's boutiques opened worldwide. By the end of the 1980s, boutiques sold goods ranging from $200 per ounce perfume, $225 ballerina slippers to $11,000 dresses and $2,000 leather handbags. Chanel cosmetics and fragrance were distributed only by Chanel's outlets. Chanel's marketer, Jean Holland, if I have said names wrong, I do apologise, explained the firm's approach, saying, "We introduced a new fragrance every 10 years, not every 3 minutes like many competitors. We don't confuse the customer. With Chanel, people know what to expect, and they keep coming back to us at all ages as they enter and leave the market. 1984 saw the launch of the new fragrance in honor of the founder, Coco. In 1986, the House of Chanel struck a deal with watchmakers. In 1987, the first Chanel watch debuted. By the end of the decade, Ellen moved the offices to New York City. By the mid-1990s, Chanel had further boutique expansions. In 1994, Chanel had net profit. 1996, the House of Chanel launched its first skincare line, Precious, in 1999. The same year, Chanel launched a travel collection, and 2002, Chanel launched the Chance Perfume and Perfectioner Substance Company, originally established in 1997 to support additional manufacturing that gathered together. In July 2002, a jewelry and watch outlet opened in Madison Avenue. Within months, a shoe handbag boutique opened next door. Chanel continued to expand in the United States, and by December of 2002, opened 25 US boutiques. In February 2019, Langford died at the age of 85, who worked with Vaughan Voda, who worked with Langford at the fashion house over 30 years, was new creative director. In December 2021, Nova was appointed global chief executive officer. Chanel had things they kept going with and just tweaking things. Like you'd see, like Chanel didn't lose fashion. Chanel was one of the more accessible luxury brands. Going to talk a little bit about Karl Feld and his life a bit. Karl Feld is a German fashion designer, was born in Germany in 1933, began his fashion career in the 1950s, moved to Paris and found a lot of success, working for several top fashion houses including Balmain Pateur and Chloé before joining Chanel in 1983 as the creative director of Chanel. From 1983 until his death, he oversaw every aspect of the fashion house creative output, from designing collective to overseeing advertising campaigns and store displays. Was instrumental in revitalizing the Chanel branding, helping it regain its position as one of the top fashion houses in the world. He was creative director of the Italian fur and leather goods fashion house Fender, as well as his own Plymouth fashion label. Throughout his career, he collaborated on various fashion and art-related projects. Langford was recognized for his signature white hair, black sunglasses, fingerless gloves, and high stanched Bachelor collars. He was heavily inspired by Coco Chanel when creating these collections for like comfortable classics, modernizing the brand. It had the double C logo. He had his own brand, but it never reached the success that Chanel did. He passed away in 2019. He worked all the way up until his death. It made sense that it was passed to Vaughan Verid, someone who worked under him for so long. Chanel had been struggling to appeasing the consumers. Chanel's one of those brands for me that doesn't appeal makeup-wise, but my makeup aesthetic is different. Like, it's very sort of colourful, whereas that's not really Chanel. A lot of focus was put on handbags and accessories. Bags like the Chanel Boy bag, the classic flap, had been staples. Chanel had been doing price increases, which is common for luxury brands. They've been increasing prices often. In 1990, a medium flap would have cost a vintage medium classic flap from the 1990s would have been $6,000. This bag retails now about $1,200. which is like, wow. The price increases and their quality was starting to lack. People have talked about how it was good quality worth the price. There's now more fake Chanel bags. Fakes are more accessible. Fakes look so similar that why would you buy the real thing? And their price increases and quality drops. Chanel was top people wanted this bag. Now it's shifting. Bringing their... It's one there. Now it's shifting. It's now a more social media focused world, doing stuff with influencers. Chanel doesn't really do that. Chanel Beauty does, but the brand doesn't really do a ton of influencer to marketing. It's not really their kind of brand, so I hope you've enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in another video.